But first, and Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney has won a new term. It's an extraordinary turnaround for his Liberal Party, who several months ago had been predicted to lose the election. The result being due mainly to US President Donald Trump's aggressive stance towards its northern neighbour, threatening to make Canada the 51st American state. Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre conceding the election in the early hours of the morning, but it's still unclear whether Mark Carney will be forming a majority or minority government. This is what he said earlier in regards to Trump's stance.
As I've been warning for months, America wants our land, our resources, our water, our country. Never. But these are not idle threats. President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never, ever happen.
And joining me in the studio is Doug Herbert, our international affairs commentator.
Hi, Nat.
Doug, Mark Carney has said Canada should never forget the lessons of the US betrayal, as he put it, but can he afford to turn his back on his southern neighbour?
In a nutshell, he cannot. There's little love lost between Mark Carney and Donald Trump. They are not exactly ideological blood brothers. However, the trade relationship between Canada and the U.S., and as we were discussing earlier, is hundreds of billions. It's the largest trade relationship in the world, over $700 billion in the past couple of years. Nothing to sneeze at. Mark Carney, yes, can look elsewhere for partnerships and economic alliances, but he knows at the end of the day that giant southern neighbor isn't going away, and he needs them. There have been some factory closings in Canada, some jobs on the line. The biggest exports Canada has to the U.S. are, both after the oil and gas industry, obviously auto parts. Those are the giant industries, and you can't just sort of like ignore it. It's the reality. It's taken decades to build up that sort of back and forth trade. Look, Trump has slapped 25% tariffs on the auto parts, which are going to take effect this Saturday. On autos themselves, not right away. But, you know, Carney's basically, his line has been he'll talk to Trump. He has to talk to Trump. He will negotiate, but he says he will only do so from what he says is a position of strength. What does that mean? It means he's already done some of it. He's slapped the equivalent of about $27 billion on retaliatory tariffs on U.S. exports to Canada. And he's going to keep going. He's also going to look elsewhere to build up pipelines, perhaps, and look for alternative energy markets. And this is all part of what he says is you have to fight tough with Trump. You have to negotiate in a tough way. He will talk to Trump. He has to. He has no choice. But he will do so carrying a very big stick.
What does Mark Carney's victory mean for Europe?
The prospect, the opportunity, Annette, for much closer alliance. We've seen the outreach in recent weeks and even months, really, in the lead up to this election between Canada and Europe, both realizing that they may be sort of natural-born allies in, going around the U.S. in a world where ultranationalism, Trump-style populism is on the rise. They have a lot in common still, despite it all, despite the rise of these populists. Namely, trade. They still have a lot. There's a free trade deal between Canada and Europe. It's nothing of the scale of the Canada-U.S. relationship. It's called Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement. That's a clunky term, CETA it's called. He's going to look to try to boost that, to try to make that, revitalize that pact. On the energy front as well, you know, his conservative candidate was a big sort of advocate for oil and building more pipelines, even across Canada, not south to the U.S., but going across Canada, carrying oil and gas to European markets. Carney also sort of promising that he's going to do that as well. Now, counterbalancing all of that energy talk, right, the search for other markets, with a nod to climate. You can't just nod at climate, but he's trying to strike a balance, which a lot of ecologists will say isn't a balance. It's throwing out the baby with the bathwater between economic competitiveness, right, keeping yourself economically viable. I know that sounds a little Trumpish, perhaps, and being an environmentalist. That is having emissions on oil and gas, as Carney wants to have, but also recognizing the need you have to remain competitive on the energy trade. So it's going to be a very fine balance on the climate as well.
Of course, the other big issue is Ukraine. So what is Mark Carney's top priority as Kyiv comes under growing pressure from Washington?
Yeah, well, Canada has been perhaps Ukraine's closest ally in sort of both the ideological, spiritual sense, next to perhaps, some of the Baltic states here in Europe and Eastern Europe as well, Poland included. Very much on the defense and Ukraine front, Canada ideologically aligned with some of the more pro-Ukraine, aggressively pro-Ukrainian European countries, among them France, among them Poland, among them the Baltic states, and now more and more we're seeing with the new chancellor coming in, Germany as well. It is going to definitely push forward, but not just seeking those types of defense cooperation pacts with Europe for Ukraine, but also on the broader front. Canada is pledging under Carney to get its NATO spending up to that 2% level. It's not there yet. That was the Trump baseline, the reason Trump was berating NATO members. And he's also looking to also build up general defense capabilities against things beyond Ukraine, such as cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, you name it. So there's a lot more right now that Canada has in common with Europe than Canada has in common with the U.S.